If you can solve this, I'll give you $3 million. The moment the crowd heard $3 million, screams mixed with cheers erupted in the hall. The CEO was smiling, but no matter how you looked at it, $3 million just to translate some Chinese had to be a joke. But just as I was about to say, I decline, I caught sight of Margaret sitting in the corner of the room. I could almost hear her cheering, "Charles, you can do it." I took a deep breath, faced my laptop, and sharpened my focus to start translating the Chinese. "My name is Charles Smith. I'm a 33-year-old employee at a trading company called Miley. This company, with several branches nationwide, was established 30 years ago by President Jones to support small and medium-sized enterprises in overseas trade. Up to now, we've been helping companies considering international expansion gain customers and streamline their logistics. Some of our clients have grown significantly with our support, and our business performance isn't too bad even now. You could say it's a reasonably stable workplace. Due to certain circumstances, I started working right after high school. But even someone like me can find a place here, showing that the company has some leeway in its management. Pulled by President Jones, who is generous and can't leave people in trouble. The company has a relatively flat hierarchy and a friendly atmosphere, as it's a great place to work. It's a popular choice for employment, and naturally, many employees here have better educational backgrounds than I do. The juniors who joined after me kept getting promoted, but I didn't feel any rush or envy. With promotion comes more responsibility, work, and longer hours. But I felt that such a lifestyle wasn't for me. Instead of working hard all week to enjoy fine dining and expensive wine on weekends, I'd rather go home on time every day and drink tea while reading a book. Because of this personality, I accepted that I would never get promoted in my life. I've always been a bit of a shadow, with plain features and no distinct traits. At monthly meetings, I rarely voiced my opinions, and at welcome and farewell parties or year-end parties, my bosses would say, "Oh, you're still working here." I would smile wryly at such remarks, which could be taken as either a joke or serious. In this way, I was an ordinary employee who did my work quietly without standing out. I had no particular interest in promotions or honors, and just wanted to live peacefully until retirement. But disrupting my peaceful days was a man named Will Taylor, my former colleague and now my boss. He is the exact opposite of me, driven by ambition and a desire for promotion, and tackles his work with gusto. Moreover, he often brags about being a high-achieving graduate from a prestigious private university. "What's with this calculation error? Where did you graduate from again? Never heard of that school." It's not even a real university if it's an F rank. He would mock his subordinates mercilessly whenever they made mistakes. Yet, when one of his subordinates was about to close a big deal, Will would suddenly appear and say, "For you, this is a decent job. Leave the rest to me and go do some chores," claiming the credit for himself, even if they tried to protest. Will surrounded himself with similarly high-educated employees who were the core of the sales department, making it impossible to compete. Employees who tried to oppose him were relentlessly pushed out until they quit. The higher-ups never reprimanded him because Will delivered outstanding results. Moreover, he took good care of the well-educated employees, acting as a bright and dependable mentor. He was a sly and troublesome employee who rarely got caught. Of course, education is one measure to judge a person, and it reflects how much they've studied over time. But Will's way of judging people solely by their education didn't sit well with me. Naturally, Will disliked me for being a high school graduate, but as we were former colleagues, he didn't blatantly harass me. Still, he would often say, "Seeing someone as indecisive as Charles irritates me. The intelligence level of high school graduates is too low to understand each other." Looking down on me with contempt, this caused his followers to also look at me coldly. One day, a few new employees arrived at our branch for training. They ranged from fresh-faced 20-somethings to experienced individuals in their 40s. Among them, the one who caught everyone's attention was a woman named Margaret Davis. "Hey, the new person who joined is stunningly beautiful." "Oh, really?" I wasn't particularly interested, but my colleagues watched the woman introducing herself with grins on their faces. "Nice to meet you. I'm Margaret Davis," she said with a smile, receiving a round of applause. Margaret, our new co-worker, had smooth, snow-like skin, large dark eyes, and slightly upturned lips painted a modest pink. Even I was momentarily captivated by her beauty. I wondered why someone so beautiful would join a mid-sized trading company like ours. However, it turned out that she had been working at a similar company, and our higher-ups had headhunted her for her exceptional skills. She's 29, 4 years younger than me. To be so talented at such a young age made her seem like a completely different type of person from me. Thinking that, I quickly returned to my desk to finish the pile of paperwork. Will had dumped on me first thing this morning, but as soon as Will and his cronies heard about Margaret's background, they started approaching her. "Margaret, you graduated from a pretty good university. We have high expectations for you. My school might have had a high ranking, but here I'm a newcomer, so I'll work hard from the basics," she replied earnestly. Will burst into a crude laugh at her serious answer. "Know someone as capable as you is more than welcome here, unlike those who just sit at their desks and get a paycheck." As he said that, Will probably turned to look at me. Hearing Will's slightly raised voice, I focused on the work in front of me. It's best to stay away from bad examples like that. I can teach you a lot, so feel free to rely on me anytime. Yes. Margaret probably couldn't stand up to her new boss, Will, too strongly. Noticing her troubled expression and vague response, I thought this was a bit problematic. I had been glued to my computer for a while when an unfamiliar female voice suddenly called out to me. Excuse me." "Yes, can I help you?" I looked up from my computer screen, and there stood Margaret. "May I know your name?" "Oh, it's Charles Smith." It seemed she was making the rounds to greet everyone. "I noticed you weren't there when I introduced myself earlier." "Oh, I had to return to my desk in the middle of it. I'm swamped with work. Sorry about that." She had made the effort to stop by my desk. I hurriedly stood up. "Looking forward to working with you." "Likewise." A superficial greeting should be enough. She would surely forget about me soon enough. Thinking this, I returned to my work feeling at ease. But contrary to my expectations, her attentiveness persisted. Even a month after joining, Margaret would frequently talk to me. "Good morning, Charles." "Good morning." She chuckled at my awkward greeting, then reached out to my head as if she noticed something. "Your hair is sticking up here. Maybe it's bedhead." As she smoothed down my hair, it felt as though she was gently patting my head. "You might be short on time in the mornings, but cleanliness is crucial in sales. It's good to take a quick look in the mirror before you leave." Despite her mild reprimand, Margaret was smiling warmly. My co-workers were staring at Margaret and me with wide eyes, whispering among themselves from a distance. Seeing their reactions made me want to bury my head in my hands. I had always blended into the background, barely noticeable, but now I was suddenly the center of attention, feeling embarrassed and uncomfortable. Whether she noticed or not, Margaret kept fussing with my hair, murmuring things like, "Maybe if I do this." "Oh, it's sticking up again," completely ignoring the stares of others and how I felt. This is a bit ticklish." "Oh, I'm looking for some sweets to bring to a client. Can you recommend something, Charles?" Margaret tilted her head and asked me with a sweet smile. Desperate to end this interaction, I nodded repeatedly. My brain only started functioning properly after Margaret left. Even as I resumed my work, my mind was buzzing with the fact that a woman had sought my advice. I love sweets and often keep some on my desk. I tend to order new releases or popular items trending on social media, which must have caught Margaret's eye. Realizing the gravity of the situation, I felt anxious, but it seemed Will was equally unsettled. Despite working at a distant desk, he began handling papers roughly and glared at me with anger-filled eyes. Don't get the wrong idea. It's just that we can't rely on an incompetent employee like you for actual work. Stick to tasks that don't require a degree, like picking out gifts. It seemed Will had taken a real liking to Margaret. He was clearly upset that she had come to me instead of him. All my efforts to stay unnoticed were in vain, and as I found myself on Will's radar more than ever. But despite this, Margaret continued to greet me first thing every morning and naturally sit with me in the cafeteria. Her constant attention made me wonder if she had feelings for me, but I reminded myself to stay calm. There was no way someone as plain as me could attract someone as beautiful and competent as Margaret. She was probably just being friendly or saw me as a harmless mascot. As I tried to keep these thoughts in check, the company's anniversary party approached. This year marked the 30th anniversary, and it was going to be a grand celebration with all employees invited. Rumors spread that even the usually unseen company president would attend, making everyone increasingly anxious. Among them, Will was particularly elated. Every day, he strutted around the office with a broad grin. The company expects great things from me. With the president attending, it's the perfect opportunity to show how capable I am. Will seemed more interested in flaunting his abilities than in celebrating the company's growth, or sharing the management vision with his colleagues. All he seemed to care about was how to climb the corporate ladder as quickly as possible. I learned that Will had volunteered to be the organizer shortly after that. The company's anniversary party was a significant event. Being the organizer was a huge responsibility, but successfully pulling it off could leave a good impression on the higher-ups. Will, grinning, proudly told his entourage, "If I make this a success, my promotion will be just around the corner, and I'll make sure you all benefit from it too." With that, Will formed an organizing team and actively started deciding on the event details and venue. But he left the time-consuming tasks like arranging the venue and decorations to his subordinates. Just like with his usual work, the actual hands-on tasks were done by his team, while Will handled the easy and visible parts. He then presented it to the higher-ups as if he had done everything himself. Will made a point of coming over to my desk, his grin widening. "You're probably useless for this, given your low education, so I won't assign you any tasks. But don't hesitate to come. You work here too, so you must attend the event." "Yes, understood," I replied. Will walked away, looking pleased with himself. As he left, I had a strong intuition that he was planning something. The day of the anniversary party arrived. Held in a large venue, it was a grand affair, and Will handled his role as organizer seamlessly. Despite his unpleasantness, he was a capable man. He managed the distribution of commemorative gifts and created a video summarizing the company's history, effectively fulfilling his duties. The event was in two parts. The first half invited clients and business partners to share future visions and honor long-serving employees. After that segment ended, only company personnel remained. When the second half started, it featured a concert with a pianist, a band, and famous individuals associated with the company. Unlike the formal dinner of the first half, the second half had plenty of beer, creating a relaxed atmosphere. After about an hour of enjoyment, Will raised his voice, clearly in high spirits. "Today, we have gathered the elite of our company. Everyone here possesses an outstanding sense of loyalty. Surely, there are no useless employees who can't contribute to the company." He glanced briefly in my direction. With a sarcastic tone, he continued, "Since the president is here, let's showcase our employees' abilities. Trade is all about English. We'll conduct a surprise test to see how strong our English skills are." His exaggerated tone, reminiscent of a strict teacher, elicited laughter from the crowd. Will's English test involved randomly selected employees coming forward to translate given sentences as quickly and accurately as possible. Initially, basic business English questions were posed to the younger employees. Even if you just joined, you should be able to answer these. Will urged them as the facilitator. The new employees, sweating and racking their brains, struggled through the questions. Senior employees heckled, "If you can't even understand this English, you're worse than students." Even though it was just entertainment, the sight of these employees being humiliated in front of everyone gave me a bad feeling. President Jones, who values this company and its employees above all else, watched the spectacle. It's said that he was so devoted to the company in his youth that his wife left with their young child. Since then, he's treated the company and its employees as his own children. I wondered if he found this scene distasteful. However, he watched with a light smile, wine glass in hand, and even cheered, "Good job, keep it up." Clearly, he was too drunk to call off the event. Eventually, the newcomers, unable to translate much due to nerves and difficulty, trudged back to their seats. My pained expression must have looked defiant to Will. Grinning, Will stared at me. "I thought our employees could easily translate this, but it seems it was too difficult. But don't worry, newcomers. Our company has employees with far less ability working proudly." With that, Will announced over the microphone and called my name. Our incompetent employee, Charles, a high school graduate, will demonstrate his English skills to reassure the newcomers, Will said, pointing his upturned palm towards me and beckoning provocatively. As he commanded me to come forward, I felt the eyes of the entire room on me. Realizing there was no escape, I reluctantly walked over to stand next to Will. Let's compare the translation skills of this incompetent man and myself, a competent employee. You'll see what happens to those who haven't put in the effort to learn throughout their lives, Will declared, causing another stir in the audience. Amidst the murmurs of how a high school graduate couldn't possibly manage, the president stood up. Taking the microphone, he made an unexpected announcement. Using the prepared questions would be too advantageous for Will as the organizer. I'll present the questions myself. Will froze for a moment. Then, realizing this was a perfect opportunity to showcase his skills to the president, accepted the challenge with a gleeful expression. Meanwhile, I just wanted the ordeal to end and to slip back to my seat unnoticed. Seeing no objections, the president produced 2 magazines. Our major trading partner abroad is China. Do you remember the directive from 2 years ago to learn Chinese? The room buzzed with whispers. It was true that a company-wide email had instructed all employees to study Chinese. Additionally, the company offered to cover part of the learning expenses. While I had no intention of learning Chinese, I knew some colleagues attended a school near the station or took online classes. But no matter how hard I tried to remember, I had never seen Will studying Chinese. Here, I have a Chinese economic magazine. How about translating the same page? At this unexpected suggestion, Will turned pale as he listened to the president. Smiling, the president continued, "Can you translate it clearly enough to satisfy me? If you can solve this, I'll give you $3 million. At the mention of $3 million, a mix of screams and cheers erupted in the room. Surely, $3 million was a joke. Will had brought up a surprise test, something reminiscent of school days. So the president must have decided to play along, probably planning to wave around a paper with $3 million written on it and say, "Just kidding." I heard whispers from the employees. "No way a high school grad understands Chinese. The president's joking around." Amidst this, I felt disappointed. I respected President Jones for valuing the company and its employees. But was he also looking down on my high school education? Thinking this, I was ready to decline and let Will take the win. I didn't care if the quiz fizzled out or if the anniversary party turned awkward. But just as I was about to say, I decline, I made eye contact with Margaret, sitting in the corner of the room. She had been watching me from the start. Even when I looked away several times, she kept her serious gaze on me. I could almost hear her cheering, "Charles, you can do it." When was the last time someone cheered for me? A moment ago, I was set on backing out, but I didn't want to disappoint her. I shook off my hesitation and decided to give it my all. In front of me was a laptop for typing my answers, the same as Will's. I took a deep breath, focused, and began translating the Chinese text. I scanned a few lines ahead, figuring out how to accurately convey the meaning in English. I mentally sifted through several options, typing out my translations in the otherwise silent room. Meanwhile, Will just stared at me in shock, muttering, "What? How is Charles? I don't get it." Before he could finish his sentence, I completed my translation and handed it to the president. The president read it carefully for a moment, then put his hand on my back with a broad smile. "This is excellent. It's clear and accurately translates tricky parts often misunderstood in overseas contracts," he announced. He then gave me a warm round of applause. Seeing the president's reaction, a few employees began to clap hesitantly, which quickly grew into a rousing ovation throughout the room. Meanwhile, Will abandoned his blank laptop and stormed over to me. "Hey, what just happened? How did you cheat? There's no way a high school graduate like you understands Chinese." As Will, pale with rage, grabbed me, I calmly replied, "I didn't do anything special, I just translated it." "That's impossible. A high school graduate like you couldn't have learned a foreign language like a university student." Realizing there was no escaping this now, I reluctantly began to tell the truth. "Actually, my education in Japan ended with high school. After that, I went to Harvard. That's where I thoroughly studied Chinese. Harvard has one of the best language programs, and students from all over the world come to learn various languages. In the classroom, using English was prohibited. In addition to regular university classes, the language program assigned mountains of homework, making it a rigorous course. However, within 6 months, you could master the language. I had an overseas academic background, but I kept it quiet because I didn't want to be judged by my education. Never did I expect to reveal it at a company party." Even after hearing the truth, Will just shook his head in disbelief, growing paler. Instead of believing me, he searched everywhere, from my suit pockets to my wallet, looking for any hidden answers. Finding nothing, he grew increasingly frustrated and shouted louder, "President, let's do it again, this time in English. There's no way he knows Chinese. This must be a mistake. Calm down and take a seat," the president said, taking a sip of water instead of wine, then continued with an unexpected announcement. "I have something to tell everyone. For a long time, I've been concerned about the increasing turnover rate among our employees." The room fell silent, everyone listening intently. The president went on, "This trend is particularly strong among employees who joined us with only a high school diploma. So today, I've been observing your behavior directly. Most employees listen with bated breath, while a few turn noticeably pale." Will and his entourage. "After observing today's events, I understand why the turnover rate is so high. With all due respect, I don't understand what you mean. Employees with good academic backgrounds are excellent because they can continue studying." Will, not grasping that he was being reprimanded, hastily made excuses, which only made things worse. "Stop thinking that life is determined by academic background. I want you to become someone who can be proud of what you can do now, not what you did in the past." The president's tone was calm, but his voice had a depth and authority that commanded respect. Will flinched and kept head down, visibly shaken. Even as his contemporary, I had never seen him look so defeated. The president then turned away from the trembling Will. "Now, as promised, I will give Charles the $3 million. I suppose you mean raising the paper with the amount written on it?" I assumed the president was joking, but he shook his head seriously. I'm not joking. I will indeed give you $3 million, though not in cash, but by promoting you to executive vice president, a position that will significantly influence the company's future. Executive vice president? What do you mean by that? According to the president, the company plans to strengthen its relationships with Chinese firms more than ever before. Thus, they intended to promote employees knowledgeable about the language and culture to lead the company. If you get promoted to executive vice president and prove yourself by increasing the company's profits, you might become the next president. In that case, you'll effectively control a company with a capital of $30 million. The scale of the proposition left me speechless, nodding in silence. Suddenly, Margaret, who had been standing next to me, exclaimed in surprise and admiration, "That's amazing. My father must really trust you to consider handing over the company. Charles, you are indeed as capable as I thought." Wait a minute. The president is your father. Revealing one surprising fact after another, my head felt like it was about to explode. Margaret gave me a mischievous look and explained her background. It turned out that Margaret was the child of the president's wife, who had left him when he was too focused on work, making her the president's biological daughter. When I was little, I couldn't stand how much my father worked, Margaret said, squinting her eyes with an embarrassed smile. But as I grew up, I started to wonder what kind of work could make him so passionate. And before I knew it, I was working in the same industry. Margaret had worked at a competing firm, where she quickly demonstrated her inherited talents. Because she had a different last name from her father, no one realized her true identity when she was headhunted by our company. After that, the conversation between me, Margaret, and the president became quite lively. Margaret mentioned that she had recently started learning Chinese, so I answered her questions as best as I could. Meanwhile, Will became completely subdued, as if his fire had been extinguished. No matter how much his entourage tried to engage him, he barely responded and sulked in a corner. Thanks to this, his followers managed the rest of the party, which ended without further incident. However, Will's popularity plummeted rapidly after his disgraceful display and the revelation of his poor behavior due to academic snobbery. He found himself isolated at work, with no one willing to interact with him. An internal investigation later revealed that Will had consistently taken credit for his subordinates' achievements. As a result, his previous performance reviews were re-evaluated, leading to a significant pay cut. Still, Will showed no signs of understanding, saying, "Why should someone as capable as me be punished? This is Japan, and speaking Japanese should be enough. Clients would rather deal with a prestigious university graduate like me than with someone less educated." Because of this attitude, he was transferred to an overseas branch. The president, showing a bit of tough love, sent him to South America, where little English was spoken. Thinking about how he must be struggling to learn the local language now, I couldn't help but feel a mix of sympathy and amusement. On the other hand, I was promoted to executive vice president as promised. Determined not to be seen as unworthy of the position, I worked hard on trade with the Chinese market, resulting in steady profits. "Well done, Charles. You've lived up to my expectations." The president praised me openly. But my success was largely due to Margaret's support. Since the anniversary party, Margaret and I had grown very close and are now dating with marriage in mind. As an executive, I often face tough decisions, but I always benefit from her excellent advice. I look forward to continuing to grow the company with Margaret, the president, and my colleagues. With this thought, I stepped into the office once more today,